Hey y'all, what's going on? Today I am making my predictions for every single bowl game in the 2021 season for college football, obviously. What other bowl games would I be talking about? As you can see right here, I'm really happy one of those four teams made the playoffs. Go blue. So yeah, I'll try not to be biased in my predictions today, but it's Michigan. I can't believe they're there in the first place. They beat Ohio State. What's up with that? Here's how it's going to work. I'm going to go with all the, normal bowl games first in order of when they're playing. Then I'll do the New Year's Six bowl games, and then I'll do the playoffs and then the national championship. So let's get started with the predictions. First up is the Bahamas Bowl. It's the first bowl game of the 2021 season. It's Middle Tennessee versus Toledo. Honestly, don't really know much about these teams, but I'm going to go Toledo because I remember early on in the season they almost beat Notre Dame. That's the only reason why I'm going Toledo. I don't know what Middle Tennessee has done this year. 7-5 record versus 6-6 record. Could be an even matchup. I'm going to go Toledo. I think they're slightly better. Next up is the Cure Bowl. This is Northern Illinois versus Coastal Carolina. Coastal Carolina started out the season ranked. Lost a couple games. I think they lost their starting quarterback as well, I do believe. But I'm still going to go Coastal Carolina. They had a great season last year. I think they're going to win this bowl game over Northern Illinois. I think Northern Illinois is a pretty good team, but I think Coastal Carolina is just a little bit better. Next one is the Boca Raton Bowl. I hope I pronounced that right. I probably didn't. Western Kentucky versus Appalachian State. I'm going to go Appalachian State here. Don't know much about either of these teams once again, but I'll still go Appalachian State. Better record, and I believe both these teams lost their conference championship game, but I think the Sun Belt is a little bit better than Conference USA, so I'll go Appalachian State. All right, so next one is an FCS game. It is the Celebration Bowl between South Carolina State and Jackson State. I'll go Jackson State because no clue about either of these teams, but Jackson State's got a 10-1 record, so that just makes sense. All right, then we got the New Mexico Bowl, UTEP versus Fresno State. Fresno State is a 9-3 team, but they have looked impressive this year, and then they've also looked bad in a couple games. They beat some pretty good teams and took Oregon down to the wire, so I'm going to go Fresno State in this game. I think they're the better team, and yeah, that's just what I think. A lot of these bowls, like I said, I don't really know much about either team, so it'll just be based on probably who I think is better record and probably the better team. So yeah, I'll go Fresno State in that game. All right, now we got the Independence Bowl. UAB versus BYU, who is ranked number 13 in the country. BYU, so close to a New Year's Six bowl game. They had to get in front of Michigan State to do it. They did not get that, so they're relegated to the Independence Bowl. I think BYU blows out UAB. BYU is a really good football team. They beat Utah, have a better record, and still ranked below them. I agree with Utah should be ranked higher because, they blew out Oregon twice. But, I think BYU very well could have been in a New Year's Six bowl game. And because they're not in a New Year's Six bowl game, they get put in the Independence Bowl. Kind of sucks for them, honestly. We got the Lending Tree Bowl coming up next. This is Eastern Michigan versus Liberty, and I should pick Liberty. I think they're the better team, but I'm going upset here. I'm picking Eastern Michigan. Why? I don't know. I'm from Michigan, so I don't know. I figured I'd pick some upsets here, and I think this one would be a pretty big upset because Liberty is definitely a better team than Eastern Michigan, but Liberty has also lost to some bad teams as well. I don't really know what Eastern Michigan has done, but I'm going to go Eastern Michigan because why not? The Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl, Utah State versus Oregon State. Oregon State, actually, they needed Washington State to lose in that final week. I was about to say that they were one game away from making the Pac-12 championship game, which is technically true, but they needed Washington State to lose against Washington or whatever that rivalry game is called. Instead, they ended up, Washington State won, and Oregon State did not beat Oregon. So now here they are in the Jimmy Kimmel LA Bowl against Utah State, who put a whooping on San Diego State. I'm going Utah State in this game because they looked really impressive against San Diego State. I don't know how they'll look against Oregon State, but I'm still going Utah State. Now we got the New Orleans Bowl, Louisiana versus Marshall. Louisiana lost one game this year, and that was to Texas. And yes, Texas is not a good football team, but at the time, they were ranked, and so was Louisiana at the time because it was the first week of the season. I think Louisiana is a really good football team. Not really good, but I think they're good, and they're definitely better than Marshall, so I'm going Louisiana. All right, the Myrtle Beach Bowl, Old Dominion versus Tulsa. I know very little about either of these teams. I'm going with Tulsa, though, because I'm pretty sure they took Ohio State down to the wire very early on in this year. That is the only reason why I'm going with Tulsa. Next up is the famous Idaho Potato Bowl. You got Kent State and Wyoming. Kent State lost the MAC championship to Northern Illinois. Now here they are playing against Wyoming. I don't really know what to think about either teams. I'm going to go Wyoming because why not? I mean, I would not be shocked to see Kent State win this game, but I know nothing about either of these teams. So, yeah, Wyoming. This one is an interesting one, I would say. The Frisco Bowl, UTSA versus San Diego State. I cannot believe San Diego State is still a ranked team after getting blown out by Utah State. The only reason why they're ranked is because they beat Utah. 100%. But they are a 2-loss group of 5 team that did not win their conference championship. I cannot believe they are ranked. I mean, yeah, Houston's ranked, I guess, and they are a 2-loss group of 5 loser, but they at least played Cincinnati close in the first half. San Diego State just got blown out by Utah State. I don't think they should be ranked. UTSA, I don't think should be ranked either, but man, they had such a good year going. This is going to be a really interesting matchup. I'm going UTSA, though. I think they get a 13-1 season. They would have been so close to getting a perfect season, but they blew it against North Texas. But I think that they win this game, and I'm pretty sure they're ranked in the AP rankings, so I think they will stay ranked in the AP rankings. The Armed Forces Bowl, Missouri versus Army, and I really should be picking Army here. But I'm going to go Missouri just because I don't really know. They're an SEC team. I think that they'll beat Army. Army's going to rely on their run game like they have every year of their existence, basically. They still got another game against Navy, though, so Army's got to, prepare for that, even though I think Army will beat Navy. That's a bonus prediction right there. But I'm going to go Missouri in this bowl game, because why not? I think an SEC team is going to beat an independent team. I don't know. I don't really know what to think there. The Frisco Football Classic. Don't even know what that bowl name is. It's North Texas versus Miami of Ohio. I know nothing about either one of these teams, except for I know North Texas put a whooping on UTSA to ruin their perfect season, so that's why I'm going North Texas. That is the only reason why. So I gotta look at the screen to make sure I'm getting this right. The Gasparilla Bowl, I don't think I pronounced that right. UCF versus Florida. I went back and forth on this one when I was making these predictions. I was like, an SEC team, Florida, but they suck, versus UCF, who looks okay, but not great. I'm going UCF in this game because Florida sucks. They barely beat Samford. That's embarrassing. Samford? Not even a good FCS school they barely beat. It's Samford. Yeah, no, I'm going UCF. Just because I don't believe in Florida at all. Even though, I will say, now that Dan Mullen's fired, I think they have more of a chance. So, because, they showed fight against Florida State, but I'm still going UCF in this game. Hawaii Bowl. Of course, Hawaii is in this game, because why wouldn't they be? And they're playing against Memphis. I feel like Hawaii never wins the Hawaii Bowl, so I'm going Memphis for that sole reason only. The Camellia Bowl, I swear that sounds very similar to another one I just said. I think I'm thinking of Gasparilla or something. But, yeah, it's Georgia State versus Ball State. Georgia State should have had a win over Auburn, but they didn't. I don't know how they were even close to beating Auburn, but they almost did. So I'm going with them over Ball State for that sole reason only. All right, we got the Quick Lane Bowl, Western Michigan versus Nevada. I went with the Michigan team early on. I'm still not talking about this Michigan team. I was talking about Eastern Michigan, but I'm not going with the Michigan team this time. I'm going with Nevada. I think they're a little bit better than Western Michigan. Don't really know why, but I just think they are. Remember that one year Western Michigan went to a New Year's Six bowl game? That was pretty cool. They almost beat Wisconsin in that game, too. That was really cool. But now they're in the Quick Lane Bowl, and I don't see them beating Nevada. Oh, how the times change for Western Michigan. And they had one good year, so good for Western Michigan. They were in a New Year's Six bowl game that year. I think Michigan was as well, and both lost. Nice. The Military Bowl, Boston College versus Eastern Carolina. I'm going to go Boston College. I think ACC versus the American. Eastern Carolina is one of the better American teams, but also only have a 7-5 record. Boston College, lower ACC team. I think the ACC prevails in this matchup. I'm going Boston College. Birmingham Bowl, Houston versus Auburn. Intriguing matchup. I'm going to go with Houston winning this game. They looked pretty good against Cincinnati in the first half. Second half, they kind of fell off because Cincinnati, had a playoff to play for. They won that game, they were in the playoffs. Houston was only going for the American, which would have put them in a New Year's Six bowl game. Give them credit for that, but I'm going to go Houston this game. I think Auburn is they're a bottom SEC team. Crazy, because there's 13 SEC teams in bowl games this year. They are one of the bottom SEC teams. They're right down there with LSU and Florida as bottom SEC teams. But they almost beat Alabama. Gotta give them credit to that, for that actually. But I think coming off that loss against Alabama, I don't think they're going to beat Houston. So I say they're one of the bottom SEC teams, which they are, technically in the standings, but they did almost beat Alabama. If only he didn't run out of bounds, man. If only that Auburn player doesn't run out of bounds, Auburn would be sitting with a 7-5 record and a win over Alabama. But he ran out of bounds, gave Alabama 40 extra seconds, and they took full advantage of that. Now Alabama is the one seed in the college football playoff, likely to win the national championship game. And that's not spoiling any predictions, but I'm just saying that's what's likely going to happen now. We got the first responder bowl coming up. Air Force versus Louisville. Air Force was a pretty good Mountain West team, 9-3 record. That's pretty impressive, but I'm going to go Louisville. I don't know why. This is what I'm not confident at all. If I was doing the confidence rating on the Capital One Bowl Mania, which I did, this was one of the very lower ones because I don't have any confidence that Louisville is going to win this game. But I'm just going to go with them basically because they're in the ACC. But not like the ACC is that good anyway. So, I don't really know. Anyways, moving on because I don't really have any good reason for picking Louisville. The Liberty Bowl, Mississippi State versus Texas Tech. Texas Tech nearly beat Baylor, who won the Big 12 championship. So I got to give them credit for that. But I'm going Mississippi State in this game. I think they're a good team. I don't really know what to say about them. I think they're an all right SEC team. They're definitely middle of the pack SEC team, but they did get some quality wins over teams like Auburn and Texas A&M, which the Texas A&M one was more impressive than the Auburn one. But still, they beat two teams when one of them beat Alabama and the other one almost beat Alabama. So you got to give them credit there. The Holiday Bowl, UCLA versus NC State. UCLA started off the season with LSU, and everyone's like, man, they look good this year. And then what happened? Well, first off, LSU was not a good football team this year. Let's make that clear. They barely even made a bowl game. I don't know how they made a bowl game, but they did. A&M not being able to cover an LSU player, which, whatever. They're playing against here NC State, who has a win over Clemson, which it looked impressive and then didn't look impressive, and now looks a little more impressive because Clemson is, I don't even know what to think about Clemson. They're having an off year, and they're probably going to end up with 10 wins, which is crazy. But even though I said all that bad things against UCLA, who became irrelevant as the season went on, I'm still going UCLA in this game. This just seems like a game that UCLA is going to win. Simple as that. That's my prediction right there. Yeah, I just think NC State's going to blow it in the bowl game, drop to 9-4, and possibly drop out of the rankings. And UCLA might actually end up ranked this season. Who knows? The Guaranteed Rate Bowl, West Virginia versus Minnesota. West Virginia had a couple close games like against Oklahoma, but they have a 6-6 record. Minnesota beat Wisconsin to completely knock them out of the Big Ten championship game. Would have been interested to see if Iowa would not have come back against Nebraska. Would have been interesting to see how Minnesota did in the Big Ten championship game. I don't think they would have done any better than Iowa. I don't know, but maybe it wouldn't have been that hard to do better than Iowa. I think most Big Ten teams could have done better than Iowa in that game, but man, Iowa only scored 3 points. Man, that's crazy. It's a good thing the team they were playing against has a pretty good defense and offense right now. God, these predictions can be so biased, but yeah. I don't even know if I said who I'm picking. I'm going Minnesota because I think they're definitely a better football team than West Virginia. The Fenway Bowl, SMU versus Virginia. This is a hard one to predict because I think Virginia had a really good quarterback, or has a good quarterback. SMU was ranked for a little bit, then completely fell off. They're 8-4. I'm going with Virginia because I don't really know who to pick in this game, even though they did lose to Notre Dame by a lot. I don't remember the exact score, but it wasn't a good one for them. But Anyways, I'm just going Virginia in this game. I think SMU really fell off there. Dropped all the way to 8-4. At one point was undefeated and then lost several games. This is SMU's like Cincinnati's one of their best wins. It's their third best win, and it's not even that great of a win. But hey, Cincinnati beat Notre Dame, and that's all that matters, right? In stripe ball, Maryland versus Virginia Tech. At one point, Maryland was undefeated this year. I forgot, were they 5-0 or something? Actually, was Maryland 5-0 at one point this year? Or was it 4-0 or 3-0? I don't remember. But they were undefeated at one point this season. They were borderline close to getting in the rankings. Then they got blown out by Iowa, and they just fell off of a cliff horribly. All right, Maryland was 4-0 at one point this year. They're now 6-6, meaning they lost 6 out of their last 8 games. Only made it in because they beat Rutgers in the final game of the season. So I guess good for you, Maryland, but I'm going Virginia Tech. I mean, Virginia Tech was ranked at one point this year. Remember that? They beat North Carolina, and like, man, that's impressive. And then North Carolina sucked. The Cheez-It Bowl, Clemson versus Iowa State. Clemson did not look good this year, yet they still have 9 wins in an off year. They're probably going to end up with 10 wins. I'm going Clemson in this game. That's scary when a team has a bad year and they still get 10 wins. Clemson's probably going to be coming back with a full vengeance next year, just saying. Alamo Bowl. This one's an interesting one. Oregon versus Oklahoma. It is not a New Year's Six bowl game, but it is between 2 ranked teams who are middle of the pack in like the top 25. I would have went with Oregon in this game, but I don't even know what to think about Oregon anymore. They got blown out by Utah twice. I'm not shocked that it happened the first time, but the fact that they got blown out a second time, I don't know if that's saying more for Utah or Oregon. Like, either Oregon is way worse than we thought or Utah is way better than we all thought. I don't really know what to think there. But man, they really fell off a cliff. Oklahoma's not going to have their head coach because Lincoln Riley ran off to USC. I don't think he wanted to be part of the SEC. Yeah, I'm going to go Oklahoma in this game, though, because Oregon might not have their head coach either. There's very rumored that their head coach might be going to Miami, so they might be without him, too. And if they're both without their head coach, then it just goes down to who wants it more. And I can't tell you Oregon wants anything after those 2 losses against Utah. I mean, I can't convince myself to pick them. Originally I was going to, but I'm like, I can't convince myself. I mean, they did not show anything in those 2 games against Utah or Stanford. Remember that game? They also lost that game. But they did beat Ohio State, so Oregon, you got that going for you. At least you beat Ohio State. Duke's Mayo Bowl. 2 irrelevant teams, North Carolina and South Carolina. Interesting, I just realizing that it's between the 2 Carolinas, so that's cool. I'm going to go North Carolina in this game, because remember, they almost beat NC State in that final game of the season. That was almost really impressive. But then they let NC State score 2 touchdowns in 26 seconds. They had a 9-point lead with like 2 minutes left in the game and lost. I still think they're better than South Carolina, though, even though North Carolina's season went from a top 10 preseason to a 6-6 record. Way to go, North Carolina. Music City Bowl, Tennessee versus Purdue. Both these teams did better than I thought they would, so I give them props to that. Purdue knocked off 2 teams that were ranked inside the top 3. That is impressive. But then were irrelevant against other teams. Meaning why they have an 8-4 record, even though they could have been so much better if they just would have played how they played against Iowa and Michigan State. Against every team, they would have been better, but they didn't. I'm going Tennessee in this game. Just because Purdue is not playing a ranked top 5 team. If Purdue is playing, let's just say, Cincinnati or Michigan. I wouldn't pick them against Michigan, but against Cincinnati, I'd probably go with Purdue in that game because they are top 5 killers. If they were playing against Notre Dame, I mean, they already played them early in the year and lost, but if they were playing against them in a bowl game, I'd probably go with Purdue in the rematch. Just saying. Because Purdue is a top 5 killer. Saving New Year's Six bowl games for the end, so we're skipping over the Peach Bowl and going straight to the Las Vegas Bowl. Yeah, Wisconsin versus Arizona State. Wisconsin started off the year with promise, then dropped to irrelevance, then won a bunch of games, and looked like they were going to the Big Ten Championship game to play Ohio State. And then, what happened? They lose to Minnesota. How do you do that? Instead, Iowa gets there and they're playing Michigan. No one saw those 2 teams playing. I mean, maybe at one point this year you saw those 2 teams playing, but in the final week of the season going into it, I think everyone thought it was going to be Ohio State and Wisconsin in the Big Ten Championship game. Instead, it was Michigan and Iowa. But yeah, for this game, I'm going with Arizona State because I don't know what to think about Wisconsin anymore. I thought they were good, but then they lose to Minnesota, and now I don't really know what to think about them anymore. Arizona State's an 8-4 team in the Pac-12, which isn't that good, but they were okay this year. They were ranked for a while, and then lost a couple games and fell out. But I'm going to go Arizona State. I think this is another upset right here. Gator Bowl, another ranked team matchup for two teams that are ranked that are not in New Year's Six bowl games. Wake Forest versus Texas A&M. Which Texas A&M is going to show up? That is the question. The one against Alabama when they played against Alabama, or when they played against LSU. Which one shows up? I think you get somewhere in between, which is good enough to beat Wake Forest. I'm going Texas A&M. Sun Bowl, Washington State versus Miami. I don't know what to think of these two teams. I have no opinion on either of them. I mean, Washington State beat Washington in a blowout, which is not that impressive. I mean, Montana beat Washington, so they don't have that going for them. But I can't believe Miami's actually in a bowl game. I mean, they start off the year horrible. They rebounded, made a bowl game, but I still don't think Miami's that good of a team, honestly. So I'm going Washington State. I mean, at least Washington State was one game away from making the Pac-12 championship game. That's crazy to think. They have a 7-5 record, but if Oregon State beats Oregon, they were in the Pac-12 championship game. Probably loses to Utah, but still, they would have been in the Pac-12 championship game, which would have been impressive. Arizona Bowl, Central Michigan versus Boise State. Another Michigan team here, but I'm going Boise State. Boise State nearly beat San Diego State in that game, and if they would have won, they would not have made the Mountain West Conference Championship game, even though they were the leaders in that division at the time. It would have went to Air Force, I believe. But they didn't win. They allowed Utah State to go there, and Utah State did what Boise State couldn't do, beat San Diego State. But I'm still going Boise State in this game because Central Michigan's a little bit easier than San Diego State is. All right, skipping over the playoff games. We're saving those for the end. So we're going to the Outback Bowl, Penn State versus Arkansas. Arkansas came out of nowhere to have a really good year. However, I'm going Penn State in this game. I think Penn State is a good team. They only have a 7-5 record. If you take out the loss against Illinois, because that was just inexcusable, but their other 4 losses were Iowa, Michigan, Michigan State, and Ohio State. One of those teams in the playoff. The other 2 of those teams are in New Year's Six bowl games, and the other one was in the Big Ten championship game and is playing in the Citrus Bowl, I believe, which is arguably the next best bowl game out of New Year's Six. So I think Penn State's a pretty good team. They just had to play some hard teams, and that's why I'm picking them over Arkansas. Speaking of the Citrus Bowl, here we are, Iowa versus Kentucky. I would have went with Iowa in this game, but after that Big Ten championship game performance, I have no faith in Iowa. I think they lose this game and they give it to Kentucky, and Kentucky has a 10-win season out of nowhere. I mean, arguably, you could say I don't even think they're that deserving of a ranked record, I don't think they're that deserving to be a ranked team. I think they're barely top 25, but if I had to do my rankings and had to leave San Diego State in the top 25, I don't know if I'd have Kentucky in there. I probably would, maybe at the very bottom, but I mean, a 9-3 SEC team being ranked that low, that's kind of unheard of. You think 9-3 in the SEC, you think that's at least like 14th or 15th, but 22nd, little low, but it's deserving. It's a deserving rank for Kentucky. They don't deserve to be any higher than where they are, but I think they beat Iowa because Iowa, I don't have any faith in at all because of that Big Ten championship game performance and the Purdue performance and the Wisconsin performance and every game after that where they barely won against horrible teams. The final regular game, I don't know why it takes place 3 days after every other game. This just seems weird. It's the Texas Bowl. It's LSU versus Kansas State. This takes place after every New Year's Six bowl game. 3 days later, there's just this game. This honestly might be the most irrelevant bowl game of the season just because of when it takes place. A Tuesday night at 9 p.m. Who's going to watch that? I might, just because it's football, but it's weird. Like I said, LSU, I think, is barely deserving to make a bowl game, and Kansas State at one point was ranked this season. I mean, so was LSU, but that was the preseason. That doesn't really count. I'm going to go Kansas State in this game. But like I said, this is a pretty relevant bowl game, so I don't really care if I get this right or wrong. All right, now we are on to the New Year's Six bowl games. The first one up is the Peach Bowl. This is the first New Year's Six bowl game out of any of them. Pittsburgh versus Michigan State. This is actually an intriguing matchup. I honestly wish Michigan State was playing Notre Dame and Pittsburgh was playing Oklahoma State. I personally believe that would have been better matchups. But, I mean, this is a pretty good matchup, too. no bias involved, I'd probably pick Michigan State. But because there is a little bit of bias involved, I'm going to go Pittsburgh. So I didn't want to have much bias, but Pittsburgh, Kenny Pickett, that's a good team right there. They are a good team. You take out that one bad loss they had really early on in the year. And what, didn't they lose to Miami or something? Did they lose to Miami? I mean, they always lose to Miami. Imagine if they don't lose one of those games and they had a one loss. And they only had one loss. I don't think they're in the playoffs, but they're definitely a top 10 team. Probably like 6th or something, which really good year for Pittsburgh, by the way. Really good year. Congrats to them being ACC champions. I think they win the Peach Bowl. All right, the Fiesta Bowl. Oklahoma State versus Notre Dame. Oklahoma State was about an inch away from probably being in the college football playoffs. At the time, I was like, man, I really wish they would have won that game because I wanted to see new teams in, and I was like, all right, now we're going to get Notre Dame in the playoffs. And then Alabama beat Georgia, which I did not see coming, but I should have because Georgia can't beat Alabama. And that allowed Cincinnati to be in the playoffs. If Oklahoma State wins that game, Cincinnati is probably not in the playoffs right now. And Cincinnati is probably in. I know they wouldn't be playing against Notre Dame because that's a rematch. But you get the point. Cincinnati would have been screwed. So I guess I'm all right with Oklahoma State losing that game now. Because Cincinnati is deserved. I just want to see a Group of 5 team in the playoffs. I just want to see if they get blown out or if they're actually competitive. Because I think there's a lot riding on that. But I can say that talk for later. I'm talking about the Fiesta Bowl. Notre Dame not having their head coach, but they do have their new head coach coaching this game because he was the defensive coordinator, which is interesting. But I'm going to go Oklahoma State. I think they get revenge for losing the Big 12 championship game. I hope Oklahoma State doesn't come into this game and thinking, man, we could have made the playoffs, and like they play with no passion. Because that could happen too. And it could happen for Notre Dame. I think both these teams could be suffering from, we could have made it to the playoffs, and here we are sitting in the Fiesta Bowl. I hope that doesn't happen. The Fiesta Bowl is still a very good bowl game, and both these teams should be proud that they made it to a New Year's Six bowl game because no one saw Oklahoma State being anywhere close to that when the season started. So, impressive. The granddaddy of them all, they call it, the Rose Bowl. Ohio State versus Utah. If Oregon were to win if they would have won the Pac-12 championship game, we would have had a rematch in the Rose Bowl, which would have been interesting. I think Ohio State would have put a killing on them. So Oregon should be glad. No, they shouldn't be glad. They should be disappointed that they didn't win. But man, Utah, I am glad we're getting Ohio State and Utah in this game. Obviously, there's been some bias in my predictions so far, but not in this one. Ohio State's the better team. I got to recognize that. Utah may put up a shocker and win, but I think the last time the Pac-12 team won the Rose Bowl, I believe, was USC beating Penn State in 2017. I believe that's what it was. I remember Penn State came out of nowhere to almost make the playoffs, and they won the Big Ten championship game that year. So that was impressive. But yeah, I think Utah has a shot in this game, but I think Ohio State, too much firepower is what they said against when they played Michigan. Too much firepower. I think Ohio State wins this game. Sugar Bowl, Baylor versus Ole Miss. That's a tough one. I'm going to go Ole Miss, though, because I think Ole Miss is a really good football team. Their 2 losses are, I believe, I think they lost to Auburn and they lost to Alabama, which the Auburn one wasn't as good. But the Alabama loss, that's reasonable. That's expectable. But Ole Miss is a really good football team. And so is Baylor. Give them credit where credit's due. But I think Ole Miss wins this game. It just seems more likely than Baylor winning. That's the only reason I got there. We're on to the playoff matchups. The 4 teams that still have a shot at a national championship game. I think the real question is, will these games be competitive or will they be blowouts like they are every year? Besides like one good playoff game, which was Oklahoma versus Georgia. That was a really good semifinal. But other than that, we usually get blowouts. I'm really hoping this year that both these games are close. Well, if Michigan blows out Georgia, I would be okay with that, but that's not going to happen. So I'm just hoping we get 2 close playoff games. But with this first matchup in Alabama versus Cincinnati in the Cotton Bowl, I don't really know if it will be a close matchup. I'm really hoping, Cincinnati has got the whole Group of 5 rooting for them because this is one for the small guys. If Cincinnati somehow wins this national championship, this might be one of the greatest Cinderella stories of all time if Cincinnati wins a national championship. But playing against Alabama, that is tough. Just winning against Alabama would be honestly one of the greatest Cinderella stories. Even though Alabama hasn't looked great this year, they rebounded nicely against Georgia, which is why I'm going with Alabama in this game. I just think Alabama's going to win it. Not really much to say there. Orange Bowl, Michigan versus Georgia. Michigan finally made the playoffs because they finally beat Ohio State and finally won the Big Ten championship. Thank God. When this season started, I had zero expectations for Michigan, which is probably why they're doing good. Going into this year, I'm like, okay, they sucked last year, so they're just going to be, okay. Honestly, I was thinking probably around a 7-5 record for Michigan this year. They by far blew away those expectations, and honestly, I wasn't really impressed by them until the Ohio State game. Their last 2 games, that makes them look like one of the best teams in the country. Because before that, close games against Nebraska and Penn State had me questioning if they actually were one of the best 4 teams. When Michigan lost to Michigan State, I was thinking this is why you shouldn't have gave Harbaugh an extension, because he can't beat his rivals. Thank God they did give him an extension, though, because he proved it that he can against Ohio State this year. That being said, they're playing Georgia. That is a really tough matchup. My head tells me to pick Georgia because they looked great this year. My heart tells me to pick Michigan because I'm wearing a Michigan sweatshirt. And I've been rooting for them all year long. And if Georgia, I thought Michigan would be playing Oklahoma State and Cincinnati in the first round of the playoffs, but I could not believe Alabama actually beat Georgia. And Georgia looks beatable now, which is why I'm picking Michigan. I know that's probably not favorable, but I gotta go Michigan. I just gotta. I have to. I'm not jinxing them because I'm expecting Georgia to win, but man, I can hope, right? And that brings us to the national championship game, which in this scenario, it's Alabama versus Michigan. As much as my heart wants me to pick Michigan, I can't do it. I will never pick my favorite team to win a national championship or any championship at all because that's jinxing them too much. I'm picking Alabama to win this game. I swear, if Alabama wins a national championship this year, I'm going to be so disappointed because this year it looks like there was going to be completely new teams in the playoffs. And Alabama beats Georgia, and here we are with them at the number 1 seed and probably now the favorites to win the national championship, which I don't even know if Alabama's the best team in the country. The only game that made them look like they're the best team in the country was against Georgia. Other than that, there hasn't been a game this year where I could say, yep, that's the best team in the country right there. For Michigan, I could say there is, but I'm still going Alabama. I don't want to jinx Michigan because if I pick them to win the national championship, I'd look like a fool because it's not going to happen. But we're in the playoffs, so I'm okay with that. We beat Ohio State, won the Big Ten championship game. That's all I can ask from them. Everything after that is just extra. But anyways, hope you enjoyed this video. It's been a long time since I've uploaded on this channel. I did remember the password, as you can see by this video. So yeah, hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video, whether that's on Fun Times with T, most likely, or in a prediction video, which might be a while for another prediction video. Probably the NFL playoffs I might do a prediction video for. But anyways, I'll see y'all later. Peace!